This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Samoch Dalid, and we're holding in the bottom of Samoch Gimel Amid Beis. We are 6 lines from the bottom, and once again, as our minds and hearts are with Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, we dedicate all the Zchus HaTorah to be Megin B'Siyata Dishmaya on Kol Klal Yisrael. We pick it up about 7 lines from the bottom. V'Rav Chisda Amar. Says Rav Chisda, Echad Zeh ve'echad Zeh, whether we are discussing the case of a woman testifying about accepting Kiddushin for herself, whether we're discussing a case of a father accepting Kiddushin for his daughter, Ein Salkin. Why? Vaz Rav Chisda l'tamei, Damar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda the following, B'ni Zeh ben Tisha Shanim v'yom echad, or Biti Zabat Gimel Sham Yom Echad. Someone testifies about his son that he's 9, or his daughter that she is 3. Ne'eman leKarban, avoloi leMalkus. He's only Ne'eman leKarban. He's not Ne'eman leMalkus, v'loi leOinshim, and nor for punishments. So says the Gemara, Rav Chisda holds that in both of the case of the father and in the case of the daughter saying testimony, we would not believe them with regard to Ainshim. With regard to Karbanos, we would yes believe. But with regard to Ainshim, we would not believe unless there are actual Eidim. And the Gemara proves this point. Tanya Kavase de Rav Chisda, we have a Braisa that says, B'ni Zeh ben Gimel Shanav Yom Echad, Biti Zeh bas Gimel Shanav Yom Echad. As we turn over to Yud Samach Daled Amud Aleph, says the Gemara, what is halacha in both of these cases? Ne'eman l'nedarim, u'lecharamim, u'lehekdeshos, u'le'erchim. Aval, and here's the punchline that we're looking for. Aval loy lemalkus v'loy lo'inshim. So we see that Rav Chisda holds the same in a Braisa, that there is no ne'emanis for one to give edus for himself regarding Einshim, regarding Malkus. And with that, we begin. We really probably should have finished that in the previous year. That really wraps up the previous year. But with that, we begin a new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Kidashti Asbiti, Kidashtiya V'gerashtiya, Kidashtiya V'gerashtiya, Kishikitana, Varehi Kitana, Ne'eman. Says the Mishnah the following. If a father says, I gave my daughter, I married her off, but I did so while she was a ketana. Or I married her off and she was divorced while she was a ketana. And she currently is still a ketana. As Rashi says, Achshav kisha'omer aleha kain. Now, when the father is talking, she is still a ketana, ne'eman. Then he is believed. But kidashtiya v'gerashtiya k'shi ketana varehi gedayla. Then Einoi Ne'eman. Then he is not believed. So that's really part A of the Mishnah. We could say, saying testimony on the girl, what happened when she was a ketana, and she is a ketana, then there is a Ne'emanis. But saying testimony on a girl about what happened when she was a ketana, but she's currently a gedayla, there is no Ne'emanis. Nishves upadisa bein shi ketana bein shi gedayla einoi ne'eman. If the father says that his daughter was captured and he redeemed his daughter, whether this happened while she was a ketana or a gedayla, einoi ne'eman, he is not believed. Now, what is the detail that we need to know with regard to Nishves? So Rashi fills this in, and Rashi teaches on the 4th narrow line that the Nikuda, the detail of Nishves, is that she's now Psula L'Kuhuna. Why? Because we're Mesopik, we're unsure that maybe the capturers had their way with her, and maybe we have a case of a suffix Zaina, and that is the reason why she would potentially be Psula L'Kuhuna. Says the Mishnah, the father is not Ne'eman in such a case. Asks the Gemara the classical question, not really a question, just trying to figure out what is the din in the Mishnah, Maishna Reisha or Maishna Seifa. What is the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa, referring to the first two cases of the Mishnah, that if he said, so Yamos, she's a Ketana, she's believed. If she's currently a Gedailah, then he's not believed. What is the difference? So explains the Gemara, Reisha biyadei, Seifa la biyadei. In the Reisha, since she's still currently a Ketana, therefore it's biyadei. It's currently in the father's power to go and marry her off. So he's Neman, he has a credibility to say what happened. In the Seifa, if she's currently Gedailah, the father has no longer any power to do anything for her, and therefore he doesn't have any Nemanis about what happened. Asks the Gemara, V'lai, is that true? But what do you mean? Ask the Gemara. Ask the Gemara, and the truth is we're including both cases in the Seifa. If you look at Rashi, Seifa Lav V'yadei, Rashi teaches Likacha Misha Gadla. Number one, as we explained, he does not have the ability to marry her off when she is a Gedailah. And number two, V'leila Maisra B'yad Akum, and he also doesn't have the ability to give her over to Goyim, like Gedailah, like Ketana. So to make the Mishnah simple, let's call it A, B, and C. A, she is a Ketana. B, she is a Gedailah. And C is the case of testifying of that she was captured. In case A, we said he's Neman. In case B, we said he is not Neman. And in case C, we said he is not Neman. So the Gemara is explaining that in A, it's Biyadeh. But in B, when she's either a Gedailah or in the scenario with regard to giving testimony that she was abducted, he is not an Neman. Ask the Gemara now, what do you mean? It's true. He can't have her be abducted, be captured by Goyim, but he could do the same result. What was the result? The result was that she's psula l'kuhuna. So says the Gemara, he is able to marry her to a chalal, and the din thereby would be the kabasla mekuhuna, and ubasla her to kuhuna. So at some level, even in the Seifa, it is biyadeh. Explains the Gemara, haloi kasha. Krav Distoy ben Yehuda, who says, B'nois Yisrael, mikvah tahara lechalolim. A kosher girl of B'nois Yisrael is a mikvah tahara for a chalal, meaning that if she, a regular B'nois Yisrael, is together with a chalal, the din is that it at some level acts as a mikvah, meaning she's still kosher to a kohen afterwards. And therefore, we stick to our guns that it's not biyadeh of the father. Why? Because even if you were to marry her to a kohen, to a challah, she would not be pasal likauna. Ask the Gemara, very biyadeh asila mamzer. Answers the Gemara, Krav Akiva, Damar in Kiddushin Taivze b'chayve lavin. And therefore, again, it would not pasal or likauna. Asks the Gemara, question 3, Rabbi Yadal asila alman l'kohen gadol. If she was almana to a kohen gadol, ukrav semai, the tanner of semai oimer, menakol oisin Rav Akiva mamzer chos memon l'kohen gadol. Shari amra taira lo yikach lo yichal, the Torah specifies lo yikav lo yichal in case of almana l'kohen gadol. Chalu le'emaisa v'inoisa mamzerim. So says the Gemara, if we're going within Rabbi Akiva and almana l'kohen gadol would yes create a paslos l'kahuna. Says the Gemara, Rav Yeshavev. What does Rav Yeshavev say? The Amar Rav Yeshavev argued on Rav Akiva, and he said, "Boyu v'netzavich al Akiva min Yosef, Shari Oimer kol shein lo Yisrael, Havalan Mamzer." Because Rav Akiva held, and it does not have Yisrael, the Vlad is a Mamzer, whereas Rav Yeshavev argued, and Rav Yeshavev held that in such a scenario, it would not actually create a pasal likahuna, and therefore this would not be a case that would be biyadeh of the father. Says the Gemara, 1 second, 2 lines from the white lines. Hanich l'Rav Yeshavev ilataymei denavshei shabir ali lafukim mitayim d'Rav Simai koasi. But if Rav Yeshavev is just arguing on Rav Simai, or Rabbi Yadlasi l'chayve asay, we could theoretically still find a case that would create a pasal l'kahuna if he marries her to chayve asay. Amar Rav Ashi Says Rav Ashi on the first Y line, V'tizbra, Reish Misham de Biyadai, who Nihi de Biyadai lekadshai, Biyadai legarshai. Says Rav Ashi, 1 second. Let's go all the way back. What was this whole teretz that we're dealing with? This whole teretz was that we were saying that it's biyadei, that it's in the Father's power. And we went through a whole list of scenarios trying to create a case of pasul likahuna. And we found one specific scenario. But says Rav Ashi, it makes no sense. Because in the case of the Reisha, it's good he can marry her biyadei when she's a ketana. But could he go and have her divorced when she's a ketana? So it's not considered biyadei in the first place. V'oid, and furthermore, and if the man does not want to marry this girl, can the father go and force him to marry? It's true that the father has control over his kitana, but he doesn't have control over the man that he's trying to get her to marry. So that doesn't work either. So says the Gemara, the chilik in the Reish and the Seifa asks Rav Ashi is not because of it being biyadei or not. So rather, says the Gemara 3 lines into the Y lines, a new pshat. Elam Rav Ashi Reisha Rachmana Heimane Kiravuna. Rather, says Rav Ashi, in the Reisha, you know why the father has the credibility about his daughter while she is still a ketana? Kirav Huna, excuse me. From where do we know that a father she'enaman is believed le'eser es bitoy min ha'teira? How do we know that a father has an amanos regarding his daughter min da'araisa she'nemar? The pasuk says, "As biti nasati leish hazeh." My daughter I gave to this man. Leish asra hazeh lehatira. The words when it says he got to marry to this man, that makes her into a married woman. But when he says hazeh, that's atira, then it allows them to be together to that man. And that's the raya. It's a straight up pasuk, according to Rav Huna, that a father has an amanas regarding his daughter who's a ketana. And now says the Gemara, b'nisuin heimane rachmana la'av, but b'shavyi loy heimane. When it comes to nisuin, to say that his daughter goes married and then divorced, that's where there is an amanas to the father. That's what we're learning out from the pasuk of Esbiti Nosati Lish Hazeh. However, with regard to Shivuya, with regard to testifying about the state of captivity of his daughter, that the father does not have any nemanos about. Continues the Mishnah, 10 lines from the bottom of Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Mi Shamar B'Shas Misasai. Someone at the time of his death says, Yesh li banim, Naaman, he's believed. Yesh li achim, einoi Naaman. But if he says, I had brothers, which thereby makes a situation of yibum for his wife, then einoi Naaman. Asks the Gemara, the Gemara begins by explaining the Mishnah. Alma, Naaman lahatir, vein Naaman laser. We see from the Mishnah, to say that he has children, which means there's no yibum. Again, the case of yibum is that one's own is nifter. Without any children, then his wife marries the husband's brother. But if he has children, there's no din of yibum. So says the Gemara from the Mishnah, we see there's an amanis lahatir. There's an amanis to say that the wife is mutter, does not have to do yibum, meaning he can testify that he has children. But there's no namanis to say that his wife is aser, meaning to say that he has brothers, and there is a situation of yibum. So says the Gemara, if that is true, then the Mishnah does not concur with the opinion of Rav Nasa the Tanya, whom we learned in our Brisa teaches. B'shas Kiddushin, at the time of Kiddushin, Amar, if someone says, Yesh li banim, B'shas Misa Amar, Ein Loi banim, B'shas Kiddushin Amar, Ein Loi achim, B'shas Misa Amar, Yesh Loi achim. In these 4 cases, Naaman lahatir, Ve'enoi Naaman lasar, Divrei Rebbe. That Shitas Rebbe, that in all the cases when he's giving eidos that makes his wife mutter, there is a nemanis, but not to make his wife aser. Rav Nosson Omer af neman lo aser. So says the Gemara, seemingly our Mishnah is not like Rav Nosson. Amar Rava, says Rava, we can even fit the Mishnah with Rav Nosson. Shiny asamoai kivam de b'shas misa kahadar bei. The case of the Brisa was he said one thing b'shas marriage, then he changed his mind b'shas misa. That's when Rav Nosson said he is af neman le'eser. Why? Because ema koshta kamar. Because he's changing his mind. We could say he's telling the truth. Whereas in our Mishnah, there's no chazara. There's no statement A, and now he's clarifying b'shas misa. No, in the Mishnah there was only one statement, and that's the reason why in the Mishnah it would only be neman lahater, not neman le'eser. But it could really fit even with Rav Nosson, who's discussing a chazara. Amar le Abaye, 5 lines to the bottom. V'lav kol dechenu. As Abaye, is it not even more true? And now Abaye explains. Hashtoma also to come mora leili diburei. In the Mishnah, in which he's contradicting that which he said. When he got married, he said, hey, now at the time of death, he's saying something else. Amrit kushta kamar. And yet Rav Nosson says, we believe him. Mas Nisan in our Mishnah, Tilai kamar leila diburei, in which he's not contradicting his words. Like kol shekin. Then certainly he should have a credibility. Why are you saying that the reason that he's chayzer is a reason to be more believed? The opposite, in the Mishnah where he's not contradicting himself, that's where there's more reason to be believed. So says the Gemara, Ela Amar Abaye, a new way of reconciling our Mishnah with Rav Nosson. Masnis on the Mishnah, Toloi muchsik lon ba'achi, v'loi muchsik lon bibani. In the Mishnah, there's no muchsakais. There's no preconceived notion at all. Damrinan. And therefore, we could say, Kivan, Toloi muchsik lon bibani, v'loi ba'achi. Amar yesh li banim naman, yesh li achem eino naman. Why? Because he does not have the power to aser her on the world by saying Yeshli Achim. So when there's no muchsik, the husband on his deathbed does not have the power to aser her. But Braisa, in the case of the Braisa, in which Rav Nosson was discussing as we turn over to Samach Dalid, Amid Beis, the muchsik lon ba'achi. In the case of the Braisa, where there is a muchsakais, we know that there are brothers of muchsabibani, tamrinan. So then, in such a scenario, that what happened in the case of the Bryce, let's remind ourselves that when they got married, what did the husband say? When they got married, he said there was no yibum. Why is there no yibum? Because he said that he had children and no brothers. So then we could say, Mali l'shaker, a classical migu. We could say, why would he lie? Meaning, Maika Amar lemifter miyavam, Mati Amar patranu l'chabekita. Because at the time of marriage, let's remember, he's alive and well. So at that moment, if all he's doing is trying to pater his wife eventually from Yibum, he could do something simpler. He could just give her a get a moment before he dies. So he has a migu to create a nemanis in such a scenario. That's the reason why we believe the husband b'shas Kiddushin, because there's no reason to lie. So the Rav Nosson could fit with our Mishnah, and meaning that a husband does not have an nemanis lasar. The case in the Braisa, that case is unique because it's a classical migu amali l'shaker that bolsters the husband's claim. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Savar, Mali l'shaker b'makai, Mali l'shaker ki edim dami. They're considered like edim vasa. Edim akre chazaka. Rabbi says that when the husband originally said that which he said, saying that there's no Yibam is so strong that it creates a situation as if there's Eidim. For Amnasan Savar, no, Mali L'Shakar Ki Chazaka Damu, Lasi Chazaka V'Akri Chazaka Legamri. So explains Rabbi dropped deeper that really at the crux of the machlaikas between Rav Nosson and Rabbi is how strong does the Mali L'Shakar go? How much of an avanis is it? Will it even have a credibility against Eidim, a very large Shasa Mali L'Shakar b'Makayim Eidim? We continue with the Mishnah on Samach Daled Amid Beis. Says the Mishnah, Mekadesh has Bita Stam. Someone marries his daughter Stam, but he doesn't say which daughter. Ein haboy grace bechlal. The older daughters are not included in such a scenario. Meaning, let's say someone has 6 daughters and he goes and he marries one of them to a man. The older daughters are not presumed to be included. Someone has 2 groups of daughters from 2 wives. And he says, and he says, I married off my older daughter. Which is the older daughter? Does he mean it's the oldest of all? Maybe means the older of the younger group. Or maybe it means the younger of the older group, which is so we're not sure one of the 3 girls could be included. But one we know for sure. Except for whom? Every daughter potentially can be included aside for the youngest. So they're all usher aside for her. Rav Yosi Aimer, no. Kulan mutarais chutz ben hagedol shebigdailos. Rav Yosi says we assume that he means the oldest one, and she's the only one that is usher. And finally, the Mishnah concludes with one more case. Kidashti esmiti. If someone says he married off my daughter, his daughter, Haketana, his younger daughter, but we don't know. This is the flip of the previous case. Excuse me. Rav Yosi Omer, exactly the same din. Kulam mitarais chutz min haketana shebeketanis. So the final 2 cases in the Mishnah mimicking each other. One who marries off his elder daughter, we don't know which one. One who marries off his ketana daughter, we don't know which one. There are 2 groups. Rameir says all the ones that are a suffix or asr aside the one which is a vadai. And Rosi says no, it always means the oldest or the youngest. So says the Gemara, let's go into the first case of the Mishnah, in which we said someone who marries off his daughter Stam, and we said that the Baigrais, the adult daughters, are not included. Says the Gemara, the obvious implication is Haketana is Bichlal, but the younger daughters are yes potentially included. Shmas Mina. So what do we see from the first case of the Mishnah? That Kiddushin she'ein masur and labiyah. This brings us back to the discussion we had a few days ago. Have a Kiddushin, that even though the younger daughters are not fit to have relations, still seemingly they're potentially included in the Kiddushin. Says the Gemara, no raya. It says he only has one older, one younger, so the Mishnah doesn't mean just not the older one. The Mishnah said older, referring to multiples. My boygrais the alma. Says Marab Shita. Boygrais ma'avitayu. Hachamayaskinon de shavite shliach. So the Mishnah says the Gemara is not talking about a simple case that he married off his daughter. It's talking about a case where he created a shliach to marry off the daughter. Ma'udatema, I would think, ki mekabel kedushi adaita dida ka mekabel. I would think that when he created a shliach for such a scenario, so when the father accepts Kiddushin, he has in mind adaita dida ka mekabel for his oldest daughter. Why? Because the daughter made the father a shliach. Kamash Malon, that know that even though the daughter made the father a shliach, Lo shavek inish midi disle hana mine v'avin midi delesle hana mine. Of course, the father gets hana when he marries off his younger daughters as he receives the kesef Kiddushin. So says the Gemara, one would not leave that and go and do that which the daughter asked, which is accept Kiddushin for her. Says the Gemara, 1 second, Mila Yaskinan, are we not discussing the Amra Le Kiddushay Lecha? Are we not discussing a case that she made him a shliach? And she said that you, the father, are going to receive the Ma'is Kiddushin. Still, says the Gemara in the first white line, a big yisoid. Afilu achi lo shavek inish mitzvah de rami alei, v'avin mitzvah de lo rami alei. The father has a mitzvah to marry off his daughter who's a ketana. So even though in the Hana world and in listening to the Shlichus world, the Gedailah is the one that the father should be accepting the Kiddushin for. But because he has a mitzvah for the Ketana, we assume he accepted the Kiddushin for the Ketana. And we're going to stop. No, we can't stop over here, even though. Okay, we have 3 minutes. Let's begin the next Gemara. 2 lines into the Y lines, we quote the end of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, we had 2 cases in the Mishnah. We had a case where he married a Gedailah and a case where he married a Ketana. In both cases, Rav Yosi says only the Gedailah is Asr, only the Ketana is Asr, everyone else is Mutter. And Rav Meir says Afoch. They're all Asr, says Rav Meir, aside for the one that's Vadei not included. Says the Gemara, Tzricha, we had to list both cases in the Mishnah. The case of the Gedailah Ba'akamar Rameir, thing in that case, Rameir says his din. Why? Since there is a younger one, Lahach Gedailah, Karila, it makes sense to call this one a Gedailah. Avul Baha. However, in this latter case of the Ketana, maybe he's Motor Rav Yosi the Ketana, Lahach Ketana the Kulu Karila. Maybe when it comes to Ketana, he disagrees. In the case of Ketana, Rav Yosi Avul Bahach. Sricha, that's the reason why the Mishnah had a list both cases. Based on that discussion, says the Gemara Lemeimra, it seems to say the Rameir Savar Machas Inish Navshe Lisveika. It sounds like that the crux of the Machlekes is that Rameir holds you put yourself into a suffix. For Rav Yosi Savar Loi Machas Inish Lisveika. A person does not put himself into a suffix. Yes, the Gemara we've learned the opposite. Where do we learn the opposite? To Tanam, we learned to the Mishnah, Noider, Ada Pesach. So when makes a neder, he's not going to get any enough from someone else until Pesach. If he says he makes a neder, then he's also until Pesach comes. Ad Sheyehei Pesach. Someone says a neder until it is Pesach. Aser Ad Sheyetze. Then he's also Pesach ends. Ad Penei Pesach. What if he says he makes it also until the beginning of Pesach? Rameir Savar. Rameir Omer Aser Ad Sheyagia. Till Pesach comes. If you see Omer Ad Sheyetze. Until it leaves. So we see in this scenario, Rameir and Rav Yosi are saying the exact opposite. In our Mishnah, Rameir says you don't put yourself into a suffix. But in that case, Rameir is putting himself into a suffix. And that's what Rameir is holding. The opposite. In our case, Rameir is saying that you would put yourself into a suffix. Whereas in that case, he says, no, it's only that which is a vadai. And that's only aser ad sheyagia. Until Pesach comes, and Rav Yosi sees the opposite. We conclude, Amar Rav Chanina bar Rav Dimi, Amar Rav, classically, Muchlefes Hashita, switch around the case in Nidarim. And the Raya of Atanya, bring your Raya to this, Klal, Kol Shezmane Kavua, V'amar ad Penei, Rameir Amar ad Sheyetzi, Rav Yosi Amar ad Sheyagia, confirming the switch of the case of the Darim, sticking with the way that our Mishnah said it. The Rameir holds Machas Inish Nafshi L'Sveika, a person will place himself into Safek. Rav Yosi says not, that if only the oldest is Asr, only the youngest is Asr. I'll pick it up from Abaye B'siyata D'Shmaya in the next Shir.